Good evening. You're watching Asian Review, and I'm David Day. And our special guest here is Professor Herman Finley, Jr. from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. And Professor Finley, during the course of this program, is it okay if I call you Butch throughout that?
Sure. That's what I normally go by. Okay. I tell people when I get mature enough, I'll use my real name.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a most unusual program that we want to share with you this evening. And some of you may know about this futurist, Ray Kurzweil. And one of Kurzweil's famous statements was that the 21st century will be equivalent to 20,000 years of progress at today's rate of progress, about 1,000 times greater than the 20th century. And as we look at the pace and utter comprehensiveness of technology kind of explode in every direction, that explosion raises a lot of fascinating questions. And we invited Professor Finley in to talk with us because he is a specialist and an expert on information technology. And we want to talk about the potential impact of technology in a positive sense on society, and perhaps look at some downsides that maybe none of us ever thought about before. And so to kind of get started with this, Butch, let's talk a little bit about the changing nature of power, or the power implications of technology. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I mean, if we think back to the agricultural age, power was based on ownership of land and muscle power. Okay. What you could do created power, wealth. When we moved into the industrial age, that power base moved to land and machine resources and machine power. So if you had a factory, that increased your wealth, etc. As we think about the information age and the use of information technology, that power base switches from machines and resources to the exploitation of data and the connectedness of people using that data.
And we have seen that explosion take place in a almost a perverse way with the disclosures of Edward Snowden and the NSA.
Yeah, and as you and I were talking a little bit earlier, some people look at that as purely a espionage issue, or perhaps an issue of bringing out privacy. I look at it in the light that I just talked about as Snowden, rightfully or wrongly, saying to the government, you don't have the power to control this data. This has to be shared with other people. You don't want to do that, so I will make it happen.
Let's talk now, Butch, about kind of the broad picture as we drill down into this topic. What is technology actually changing?
Well, I think of it in three baskets, three collections of technologies, all intertwined, all are interdependent. One is technology is changing limits to the human body, who we are.
Meaning, like what?
Like biomechanical, prosthetics, bioengineering, those kinds of things. Okay. It's changing the nature of what it means to be human. Second area is it's changing limits to human understanding. We're creating databases, we're creating tools to interpret data, to present data that exceed your or my or the smartest person in the world's ability to interpret and use that data.
And so, you know, I don't want to keep beating the same horse, but again, the Snowden disclosure is a perfect example of that. Is that not correct?
In one way, in that he exposed the use of data that wasn't public before him.
Right.
The third basket that I talk about is technology is changing how we make what we make. It's changing industry and economies and those sorts of things. We can talk a little bit later about some of that, but it is going back to that notion of where power is derived. It's derived from how we use information to make things.
You know, this is a very we're starting this program at I used to say the 50,000 foot level, and maybe this is more like the 100,000 foot level, with this explosion and acceleration of technology into the 21st century. I mean, I think, I don't know if I shared with you the story of being with my elderly dad on a farm where he grew up in Virginia, and when he was a boy in the 1930s, there was a Army biplane that landed on the farm, and I visited this farm recently, and we stood overlooking this pasture, and he was pointing at the place where he went down as a young boy, and he put his hand into the mud and the skid marks where it was a tail dragger biplane spun around getting ready to take off, and this is a neighborhood boy that was in the Army nearby in Virginia and landed on this field. And I was standing there looking at my dad, and I was thinking, he saw this biplane land, and at the same time in his lifetime, he was a very major executive in the space program, and he went from the tail dragger to the space shuttle. And so we're talking about explosion of technology now in the 21st century that just blows the mind.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of examples I'll use. 20 years ago, smartphones were not even thought of. They weren't even in an engineer's mind. Now, a third of the planet
It's
has
ubiquitous.
them.
Yeah.
Again, 20 years ago, it was science fiction to talk about just using your brain to control physical objects. That's now being done. People are using brain waves to control things via computers, etc.
This is the Yoda concept of
Somewhat,
right.
yeah. I mean, they're controlling model airplanes in flight just using brainwaves. Those kinds of things. Yes, technology is rapidly increasing in pace.
So we've got the changes of technology that you talked about are these three major areas: who we are, what we know, and what we do. Those three areas, technology is changing. So let's talk about now some of these key technologies that you see that are really changing the real sea change or game changers here. And one that you mentioned, let's talk a little bit about radical things coming in the areas of biomechanics.
Well, I mean, there's a number of them. I mean, the most notable has focused on military veterans, but they only make up a small percentage of amputees.
All right, Mr. Producer, would you have photo number 2 ready to go here? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and what we've seen, again, 20 years ago, the average amputee was somewhat faced with a peg leg pirate kind of prosthetic. A little bit more than that, but not much. Now we have prosthetics that are so good that sports bodies are having to decide whether a person can compete with prosthetics against people without them, and deciding that the prosthetics are too good to allow competition to occur fairly. Okay.
Let's try this. Mr. Producer, let's go to photo number 2, not number 1. Number 2, if we could. Photo number 2.
Yeah.
Let's show that. Shall we show that photo?
Sure.
Let's show that. Okay.
And what we see here is a fellow with no legs, and instead of a standard wheelchair that's kind of built for every person out there that needs a wheelchair, this was printed using what's called additive printing or 3D printing.
Printed wheelchair.
Printed wheelchair.
Custom made for
Custom made to his body so that it fit comfortably, etc. And this is just a massive increase in his ability to operate and to customize. I mean, you see it now where people with artificial limbs, they have a different limb to run with than they have to walk with. They have arms that are useful for one task and not another. These are incredibly important and very useful additions to technology and what it means to be a human being.
Let's go to the field of biogenetics. What are some of the things that you see that are happening in biogenetics now that are very profound?
couple of things. One is gene therapy, where you can now take a swab of your DNA, send it in, and get a result back that says you have a propensity for this specific kind of problem. You can take a look at your unborn child and have an analysis of what's the likelihood of specific kinds of birth defects. This is unheard of. This is unprecedented in terms of our ability to control our own health. And where they're going with that is not only identifying what your propensity for a problem might be, but designing specific drugs or therapies to adapt to your particular problem.
It's also a beautiful setup for a preventive type of medicine. If you know an individual has a propensity to, let's keep it real simple, a propensity to have a heart attack, as an example.
Yeah, exactly. My wife took a test like that. She sent in a swab to a lab, and they came back and said, you have a gene which indicates a propensity for this specific kind of heart problem. Not you don't have it, but you have that possibility. Here is a supplement, an herb, a device that will help you prevent that gene from becoming active.
And so the regimen of drugs, of supplements, of foods, of exercise, of lifestyle to protect your wife might be very different than the regimen if I were to take the same swab, same test prescribed for me.
Correct. It's individualized, and it is, as you indicated, preventative as well as restorative.
Well, let's, what we're talking on the topic of health here, what about in this new world of technologies in the field of biomedical? What's there now that we might not be aware of? Or
well,
not all of us.
Yeah, I mentioned designer drugs. That's one of the possibilities that is becoming a reality. Another is the notion of using nanotechnology to inject you with specific kinds of devices that will go through your bloodstream and identify and attack cancer tumors, for example.
Okay.
Without surgery. This is in the developmental stage. It's not in the production stage.
So what do you swallow a little pill full of little tiny machines?
You either swallow a pill or they inject it in your arm, and off it goes. It looks and identifies the problem and then deals with it.
How about one of the areas that fascinates me is this area of robotics, and let's talk a little bit about robotics. But before we get into that, why don't we share some videos with on robotics with our audience here, and maybe get you to talk about it. And Mr. Producer, would you have video number 3 ready to go here? And so before we show this, because it's very quick, by way of introduction, Butch, what do you want to tell the viewer to look for in this first video that we're going to show?
This is a video of if you will, a micro drone. It's a very, very small drone flying device which has the capacity to carry surveillance material. You can use it. It fits into your hand. You can use them either individually or in swarms. They can communicate with each other and do a reconnaissance of an area. In terms of your individual use, in terms of a non-governmental person, just someone who might want this, you may want to spy on your neighbor.
Well, let's take a look at this. And Mr. Producer, if you would show this picture. So what have we got? It looks like a dragonfly to me.
That was the inspiration for this device, was the mechanisms that real-life dragonflies use. So they created this drone to mimic it in terms of the flapping of the wings and the size, and you can see the scale there. Where the drones are going is power is an issue, so you still have to worry about how much power you have, but they're small enough now that these may have a 4 or 5 hour flight time.
So all kinds of implications on the, for art, for filmmaking, for intelligence, for warfare, for spying, for police reconnaissance, for...
You may be aware, Amazon recently suggested using a drone to deliver to your door packages from their warehouse within 30 minutes of you ordering them.
Unbelievable. Well, Mr. Producer, we're going to get ready to do a commercial break here. What we'll do is we want to examine, when we come back after the break, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit more about what's going on with robotics, and we want to talk about drones and the law, and also robots and ethics, because it's all tied in together. You are watching Asian Review, and I'm David Day. We'll see you after the break.
Castle and Cooke, Hawaii. Investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Collateral Analytics, empowering the real estate industry to make better informed property investment decisions. The Foreign Trade Zone, bringing the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone programs to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. Galen Ho, a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company. Hawaiian Electric Company, and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island. The Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, incorporating diverse perspectives to design a flexible and forward-looking energy strategy. Hawaii Energy, the state's energy and efficiency program created to help Hawaii's residents and businesses adopt a clean energy lifestyle. Hawaii Gas, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Hawaii Pacific Health, bringing technology and teamwork together to transform healthcare in Hawaii. The High Tech Development Corporation, attached to DBED, is the state's leading technology agency. The SHIDLER Family Foundation, supporting educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including ThinkTech.
We're back. You're watching Asian Review. We're talking about technology's explosion, society's dream, or is it a nightmare? And to help us with this is our special guest, Professor Herman Finley from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, a information science technology global guru, and I'm going to call him Butch. If you just joined us, we were right before the break here. We showed a video about a dragonfly, little tiny dragonfly that sits in the palm of your hand, type of a drone. And so, it occurs to me with the surveillance camera possibilities of that, Butch, that boy, there've got to be some serious ethical issues involved with the ability to spy on your neighbor.
Yeah, that's certainly an issue. What legal controls do we have that protect your privacy? I've seen an advertisement for a anti-drone device for your home, which will allow you to identify that you're being watched by a drone and then take evasive action, close the curtains, do things like that. On a more serious note, I think many of the viewers will have seen or thought about the drone attacks that are going on in the wars in Afghanistan.
Sure.
And there are major international concerns about both the legality of that and the ethics of it. I'm speaking purely as a person here, not representing the Department of Defense or the center. So that is an issue that we really need to take a look at, is we have the capability to do things. Does that mean it's good to do? And there are people who are now trying to introduce to the United Nations efforts to control what are called autonomous drones. These are drones that make a decision to attack something without human intervention. So they fly, They identify a target and they attack it without a person being involved in the loop. That's not yet the case. We have drones that will fly and identify, or South Korea has a ground-based sensor that identifies a person walking into a field and then alerts a human to say, should I shoot or not shoot? Ethically, we move the next step and we have a huge problem.
You know, Mr. Producer, let's show the audience video number 2, if we could here. But before you do that, Mr. Producer, this video, ladies and gentlemen, is very short. And so, Butch, what should people look for? What is this animal that we're going to see? What is this thing?
This is a proof of concept in terms of mobility and autonomous movement of a robot designed to be a carrier of equipment for the military in this case. It shows that it can recover from being pushed around. It shows that it can slip on ice and stand back up. Other parts of the video show it wading through water and up and down hills, etc. It's the technology that says robots can go anywhere we can. This particular device can be told to follow me, and it follows without any further commands. It just tracks along as I walk through the woods.
It doesn't matter whether you're climbing a mountain or down over rocks.
It just follows me along as I go.
Okay, Mr. Producer, let's show this video, but we'll just show the through. It's very short, about 20 seconds, just one time through.
You see the man kicking it, and it automatically, there's no one controlling this device. It's reacting on its own. And it's out there and it slips on some ice and goes down on its knees.
Boy, look at that recovery.
And then it picks back up and off it goes. It can carry a couple of 100 pounds of equipment.
Boy, what are the, it got to be some, some legal implications that, even though as a lawyer I haven't thought of all of them. I keep coming back to the Snowden example of things. What are in this whole field of robotics? What are some of the legal issues that have come to your mind?
One of the big one is, as a lawyer, you'll be happy to hear this, liability issues. If a robot does something that causes harm, who's responsible? Is it the owner of the robot? Is it the manufacturer of the robot? Is it the designer of the software that runs the robot? Is it the robot?
So as an example, in the video that we just saw, the guy kicks the robot, and suppose the robot, instead of staggering to the side, trips and falls on the guy and breaks his foot.
Right. Who's responsible?
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Mr. Producer, let's have video number 1 now ready to go. And before you show that, Butch, what is the audience going to see next? What is this device?
This is, again, a proof of concept of a device that can self-navigate to a place of choice. You tell it where you want it to go. It navigates there. It can overcome obstacles, and you'll see that. And then it can conduct reconnaissance or pick up things, whatever you want it to do, that it has the attachments to do, and then come back to you by whatever route it needs to do. So you'll see it jump a building.
Is this like a land drone kind of concept?
This is a land drone designed and for things like emergency reconnaissance in a burning building.
Okay.
You know that there's someone in there. Rather than sending a live fireman in there, you send this device in. Maybe it has to jump up onto the roof in order to get into the building because the fire is blocking the ground entrances.
All right, Mr. Producer, let's roll this video. So we have, this is kind of a crude, something looks like it comes out of a high school robotics class, right?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the robotics field that is...
It's jumping onto a platform?
It went up to the building, it identified the height, it identified that it needed to get up there, and
Whoa.
It has a little self-contained catapult
right into the roof
that throws it up there, and because of its design, it doesn't matter how it lands, it can go on about its business. One of the other concerns that is coming out in the robotics field
There it goes, back down.
Back down. It again, it identifies where it is and where it needs to go without an operator. There is no one controlling this device.
Wow.
One of the other, if I may, real quickly, one of the really interesting things that people are concerned about with robotics is the impact on jobs. There are people that are writing that robotics will replace all workers. Clearly, there have been robots in factories for a long time, and those kinds are increasingly a lot. Robots are now starting to do things that we would think would be beyond robotic capabilities. Machines are able to write music. They are able to create things. So,
well, you mentioned about writing music.
Yeah.
Butch, has there been a robot that could actually do that kind of thing?
It's an artificial intelligence program that looks at music written by people, analyzes it, and then synthesizes its own musical score. So it's not a robot, I misspoke there. It's a program that creates music.
And is there something like a human brain robot that the Japanese have developed that has done some interesting work?
The Japanese are world leaders in robotics. One of the devices they created, they have a secretary that greets people in a building, and this robot is very nice, pleasant, good-looking, very human-appearing, and can respond to normal human questions. Where's such and such an office? Where's the men's room? How do I find this place? Etc. One of the developmental robots they had has the ability to learn itself. They had a robot that they had not described a keyboard. It was nothing in its programming about a keyboard. They put a keyboard in front of it.
Okay.
The robot was attached to the internet. It took a look and made a picture of the keyboard, searched the internet for similar images, was able to identify what this thing was. It was a keyboard. It then went back to the internet and said, what do I do with this thing? And learned that it was for data input and how to use it, all without any programming by people. The Japanese are saying two things. One, they want to use this for the care of elderly people. This is a huge problem in Japan as Japan
with the
ages.
demographics, right.
And the other thing that was interesting was they said the next step after learning how to learn to use a keyboard or learning what a cup was for the robot to learn right and wrong. So it would make ethical decisions about what to do.
How does it do that? I mean,
well, that's what has to be developed, and that's one of the areas that is
you're
of
teaching
concern.
morality and ethics and law to a machine.
You're attempting to. The problem that we all face is what's ethical to you is different than what's ethical to me. What's ethical in one culture is not in another. So how do we develop a robot that can satisfactorily fit into our cultural norms? It's a huge, huge problem.
Very, very fascinating discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going to a break in a moment here. You're watching Asian Review. We're talking about technology's explosion. Is this really going to be society's dream, or is it going to be society's nightmare? Our special guest is Professor Herman Finley from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Aloha. I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
We're back. We're live. You're watching Asian Review, and I'm David Day. Our special guest is Professor Herman Finley from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. Right before the break, we were talking about drones in the law and robots and ethics. And Butch, let's talk a little bit now about this whole notion of big data. What is that all about? And maybe to help us, I guess the question is, who really owns data?
Yeah, that's one of the major battles, if you will, going on in the world today. We're all very familiar with Yahoo and Facebook and Google, the U.S. government, other governments. They're all collecting and accumulating huge amounts of data into various databases. Who owns those? Who owns your personal information when you go onto Facebook and put that in? We have these so-called agreements, which nobody reads because they're 99 pages long in font 2, but that's a huge question. That issue of big data links into a couple of other technologies which we need to bring into this. One is the notion of the Internet of Things.
All right, Mr. Producer, would you bring up photo number 3, if you would, please? And go ahead and put that up. Internet of Things, okay? I see a cow that's got 2 yellow tags hanging off of her ears, or his ears.
Right, and what this represents is the ability to use those tags as sensors with RFID tags and other kinds of things to not only know where the cow is, but you can have sensors that identify the health of the cow. You connect that with sensors in the ground that tell you how much sunlight is there, how much potassium's in the grass, what the grass is, etc. You connect all of that together with through the internet, and you have this Internet of Things. The famous issue of your refrigerator that tells you your milk is bad.
Milk is bad, you better order it quick. I'll order it for you, don't do anything.
The Internet of Things is that. A statistic, there are now more things connected to things than there are people connected to the internet. It's almost an 8-to-1 ratio. That's going to increase massively as sensors, etc. When you go into a store, your credit card will identify you, and certain products will identify themselves to you as you go down the aisles as something you might want to look at. This all ties into this further notion of smart manufacturing.
Okay. And so for our audience, what is smart manufacturing? What is that all about?
That's the idea that let's, through information technology, big data, the Internet of Things, let's efficiently manage the entire life cycle of a manufacturing process, from raw material to recycling of the product at the end of its life. Coca-Cola, for example, I didn't know it, they're the largest producer of orange juice in the world. They have a massive program underway to try to understand from the orange on the tree, on a specific tree in a specific field, through to the orange juice that you buy in a store in Malaysia, every step along the way, what happened to that orange juice and why. By doing that, some of the efficiencies that they're looking at are, for example, in manufacturing, a 40% reduction in the use of water, 25% increases in safety because of knowing how and where things are, etc. Huge improvement.
What's this whole notion of we showed earlier in the program a photograph about a printed wheelchair that was custom made for an individual. How does that notion tie into this whole discussion that we're having of it's kind of a smart manufacturing, isn't it?
It can be part of that. The technology is referred to as additive printing, or sometimes 3D printing, the notion that you add layers in order to create a three-dimensional object. What this allows is the localization of production.
So, Mr. Producer, would you put up photo number 1 if we could, please? Is that what, I'm sorry, number 1?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and put that up so we can show that to the audience. So what do we got here? This guy's riding a little bicycle.
This little bicycle was printed from a printer using additive printing. So it has a resin of some sort that is printed layer after layer after layer and produces a rideable bicycle.
So what's the advantage of that?
You don't have to, for example, have spare wheels sitting in a warehouse. If a wheel breaks, you print it when you need it. This has huge implications for supply chains. For example, again, if a company or you in your house, you break a glass, rather than going to store to buy one and spending hours to do that, you print a new glass out on your home 3D printer.
So this guy, as an example, when he's traveling, he needs his bicycle. He's going on vacation in Malaysia again.
Yep.
He's leaving Hawaii. He doesn't take the bicycle down to United Airlines and have them wrap it in plastic and throw it under the belly of the plane. He just, what does he do? Sends a PDF file or something like that?
He goes to the local 3D printing store where he's going, and using a file, electronic file, they print it. We're not quite there yet. There are businesses here in Honolulu which sell 3D printed objects. So you can ask them to print you out this or that, and they will. That's a little bit further down the road, but certainly within the next 10 years.
Mr. Producer, let's go to photo number 4 if we could here, and just go ahead and put that up here. And so I want to ask you about this whole notion or concept, Butch, of what's called deep learning. What have we got here? What are we looking at?
Well, what you're looking at is a camera view from a vehicle that the software is identifying what the objects are in that field of view.
Okay.
So the camera is looking and it's identifying that this is a tree, this is a plant, here's a sidewalk, this is a person. So it's identifying that. The deep learning is the ability to then take the next step and say, how do these things relate to one another? I now know that I'm in an urban environment. By looking at what's going on here, I can see that this is a park. The machine, the algorithms and the software can make those kinds of assumptions and judgments based on the data that it sees from its various sensors.
So are you saying that the camera or the machine looks at a scene and is learning what the situation is and can maybe make some safety decisions on how to navigate through that scene, or if there are potential problems or risks coming up from that scene? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's, for example, one of the potential uses is security in a public site. You have a camera, sets of cameras that are watching a crowd in a shopping mall.
Okay.
And they identify, and the algorithms decide that this is suspicious behavior. This person is acting in a way that raises questions. They can then alert the security force to go and further investigate.
Well, that whole concept, Butch, then leads us into kind of this whole ability to analyze and to predict. Right? I mean, isn't that what it's doing? And,
Yeah,
and that's a different field, right?
It's a related field, and all of these technologies we're talking about are interdependent. That's one of the reasons that things are changing so fast, is they are additive, they're interdependent. Predictive analytics is a field that deals with taking raw data, that big data idea again,
Okay.
taking raw data.
This is the NSA thing. Okay.
Yeah, or any business data on customers, for example.
Okay.
And saying, not only describing the kinds of customers you have, but making predictions about what those customers are going to do. For example, in a political situation, predictive analytics will enable a political campaign to not just say, this is a Democratic neighborhood or this is a Republican street. It will enable them to say, this house, David Day is probably going to vote this way, therefore we ought to either engage him or not engage him for our political purposes.
Boy. What about the use of data in some kind of, and putting it together in some kind of a map or visual context?
Yeah, data visualization. Humans are not well suited, most of us, to look at a spreadsheet and make sense of it. Okay, there are people who can do that, and I love them. The best example I can use, in a place here on the islands does a lot of it, and that's Pacific Disaster Center. If you look at a typical weather report from weathermen, you can't read it.
Yeah.
You can't read it.
Meaningless.
What they've done is they've taken that and presented it in a way that, for example, a storm traveling through the Pacific, that raw data is displayed in terms of a storm track, in terms of probable impact on a region, what level of destruction it might have, what particular key infrastructures might be affected, all graphically displayed in a way that you can instantly understand what's going on. That whole business is part of the impact of all of this. Is it enables us to understand things that we would have a hard time understanding otherwise.
Butch, I've heard the term brain gain. What does that mean, and how does that fit into our discussion here?
One of the things that has been discovered is the more people that are involved in understanding a problem and coming up with solutions, the better the solution's liable to be. When you now add that to the internet and social media, you, instead of having 15 wise people sitting around a table, you have 150 million people thinking about this problem.
So it's the whole notion of that you and I learned in school about brainstorming an issue or look for a solution on steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
And multiple parallel processing of issues. So you can have one group who's looking at the impact of smart manufacturing and trying to decide what policies might be useful there. Another group might be looking at big data and deciding what policies might be useful there. That can all be done in a very robust sort of way. One of the implications, if I may, real quickly, is where does that leave you and I, the experts? What's our role in this world in which all questions are being decided by the masses?
Boy, why don't we do this? Because I'm not able to answer that question, but why don't we do this? Why don't we take a commercial break? Let me think about that during the break. And when we come back, we'll examine some of the real heavy questions about what is this world that we're actually creating with technology? Is it out of control? Are there some great solutions that are going to make our lives better, or are we just making a big mess for ourselves? And we'll do that after the break. I'm David Day. You are watching Asian Review, and we're talking about technology's explosion.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Alalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
We're back. You're watching Asian Review. I'm David Day, and our special guest today is Professor Herman Finley from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. And Butch is an expert, if you haven't already noticed, on information technology. We've been talking in I would say semi-broad strokes here, Butch, but you know, one of the things that the question that we really want to get to here is that, you know, we're creating, with all this technology, with all of its explosion, we're creating a smart world. It's massive, it's interconnected, and with all kinds of volatilities. And what are some of the dangers of that? Let's focus on the negative side for a moment here, real quick. What do you see as some of the challenges that we have?
Yeah, I mean, one of the key questions that's out there is, how do we control this technology? There are horror stories of robots gone wild that eliminate, you know, the Terminator robot.
Or the collateral damage from a drone
Or the collateral
Yep.
damage from a drone, or what's referred to as gray goo, which is nanoparticles that are self-replicating that then eat the world, if you will. Sounds like science fiction, but not completely. There's also social implications that I think are serious that we need to think about. If robots, on a positive note, take over the physical labor and the hard things that we do, where do we derive meaning? Most of us derive meaning from the jobs that we do, the way
That's
that we
right.
do that. If those are all done for us, what's the meaning to my life? There may be a...
Well, maybe we're freed up from job lock.
That could be.
And we go
that
write poetry or something like
Right.
that.
And that will be...
Just kidding.
No, that is in fact one of the thought processes, is that this will free humans to do what humans do best. We will no longer be beast of burden or wrench turners in a factory. We will be able to go out and be creative. We will be able to interact with other people, providing that human touch that's not there. One of the, if I may real quickly, one of the other dangers out there is an unequal application of this technology, so that we have technological haves and have-nots, knows and know-nots. So we end up with a very elite society and then a pretty underprivileged society.
And we can start to see that a little bit just in the groups that carry smartphones and the ones that don't, as a real primitive example, you know. And because the ones who use smartphones are doing all kinds of things with their phones, and those that have the old-fashioned kind don't even, they're not on Facebook with that type of phone. What about benefits?
Oh, there's huge benefits. In fact, that's one of the long-term trends that has been proven over and over in human history. Technology, massive technology change is painful, disruptive, and nobody likes going through it. Once you're through it, life is so much improved that you never want to go back. Some of the benefits here: massively improved health care. Health care, your preventative,
Right,
your
we talked about that.
restorative, all of those kinds of things. We talked about the possibility of a leisure life, the life of the rich and the famous for most people. Elimination of the material needs of most of the underdeveloped world. Those are all good.
We're almost out of time, and we got to get to the key question here, because it seems to me that there needs to be some kind of discussion, because we have just, up until now, technology has just developed in whichever way it develops without any controls at all.
That's right.
And so what is the discussion that needs to happen, do you think?
As I said, part is, what are the policies that we need to have to control the impacts of the technology? The technology is going to occur. Some of it will work, some of it won't, but the progress is going to be there. What we as people need to have is a debate about, what do we do with it, and how do we control it, what's our role in it. One of the questions that's out there is, who decides what you can know? Because right now the technology is increasingly deciding for you. So we need to, as a society, say, who gets to make that decision? Is it you? Is it your professor? Is it Google? Massive question.
Butch, Professor Herman Finley, thank you so much for taking your time to join us here on Asia in Review. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this program. I'm David Day, and we will see you next week. Same time, same place. Good night.